After the release of American Wasteland, Neversoft set their sights on the new up-and-coming consoles, the PS3 and Xbox 360, and tried to figure out how to use the new hardware to give players a new experience they couldn't have from the previous set of platforms. Despite being only made a year from each other, Project 8 and Proving Ground feel like two completely different games, which makes sense considering how different the direction of these games were. So let's dive in and explore these directions that Neversoft experimented with when the Tony Hawk games came to the 7th generation of video game consoles. So, a new generation of consoles meant some big changes to the Tony Hawk formula, so let's talk about some of them. First of all, one of the biggest changes from the previous games to Project 8 was the removal of a story. After all, it feels a lot more laid back than the Underground games. Project 8 doesn't have a story at all, although that's not to say there's no progression or fictional characters along the way. So, let's talk about how Project 8's career mode works. The player's number one goal is to make it into Tony Hawk's Project 8, and to do that, they must place within the top 8 skaters by doing the different types of challenges around the map. First, there's markers all around that have the name of a general trick, and they must do said trick in order to get a ranking. Secondly, there's the photographer characters that will have players either doing certain tricks over a certain set piece, or having the player follow them and do certain tricks and combos in a limited time frame. Both of them give higher rankings if the player does the most extraordinary feats possible. Then there's professional skaters that will pop up sometimes, and command the player to do specific things relating to the profession if they want to climb up the Project 8 ladder. Next, there's classic goals, which are pretty much the gameplay from the first 3 games. Do a couple of goals in a small area in under 2 minutes. Get There's are challenges where players must reach a few different points in a set time frame, but they're not to be confused with own goals, which is when a player must follow a certain line in order to beat it. Finally, there's goals that let players unlock new areas of the overall map, and these usually consist of the player having to do a few things back to back in order to advance. Overall, I actually really like this system. This gives the player so much freedom over what they want to do, and how they would like their playthrough to go. The variety really plays into this game too. Players won't ever feel like the gameplay is monotonous, or like they have to do similar goals in order to unlock the next area. The mix of simple and complex goals works well too. If the player wants to lay back, they can just do the smaller challenges to gain a few ranks. Then once they're ready to lock in, they can hit up the special characters to expand their play area. Having the classic mode back is also a great addition. I love that mode from Underground 2 and American Wasteland, so the fact that it's in this game and is seamlessly intertwined to the gameplay of Project 8 is just amazing. The only complaint I have about this system is the marker trick goals can be confusing to execute. Whenever the player does a grind or manual marker challenge, it doesn't exactly tell the player where to go next, so oftentimes they'll have to fail the goal and search around the area to find out the way they're supposed to do it. Problem is, these goals aren't always linear, and it can be frustrating having to find the right markers. It would have been nice if there was a pointer on top of the screen to guide players on where to go next, so they wouldn't have to scramble to find the next marker. Proving Ground has most of these goals too, but the classic mode and Get There is missing. Project 8's special missions where the player unlocks certain things like new parts of the map were turned into episodes for this game. Proving Ground has things known as episodes, where players do a couple of missions with a professional skater in order to learn the ropes of skating, sponsorships, getting into a magazine, making their own skating pieces, and much more. For the most part, I really enjoy the episodes. They're just the right length, they all feel unique, it's cool to see the pros involved in the story, and as I stated before, I enjoy the non-linear narrative of this game, so connecting with the other skaters in this game is enjoyable. Project 8 and Proving Ground allow the player to edit and add pieces to the map, although Project 8 only allows for players to edit certain parts of the map, while Proving Ground lets the player do it wherever they want. Don't get me wrong, I think this feature is cool, I just didn't really use it. I mean, it's nowhere near as cool as the wacky set pieces from the creative park modes of the Pro Skater games, like the spikes and lava. Project 8 and Proving Ground have the same progression system when it comes to how they upgrade their general skills like grinding and manualing. As they keep doing those tricks, the appropriate skill keeps going up and up until the player reaches a new level, which will make it easier to control said trick. This is a double-edged sword in my opinion. On one hand, this allows players to naturally get their skills up by just playing the missions, so it doesn't break away from the main fun of the game. But this also means the player doesn't really have to do much in order to get their stats up, so it doesn't take any skill to get better control. Before I go away from both games' challenges, I just want to say I'm also a fan of the rating system of this game of AM, Pro, and Sick. This cuts out the repetition of having to do the story mode over and over again to unlock new rewards. It lets players decide what's good enough for them to end things on. I will say though, Sick can be pretty difficult sometimes. Like, it's crazy the feats players will have to pull off for some of the Sick challenges. But I guess Neversoft really wanted players to prove their skills. Alright, enough of these games' similarities. Let's talk about what separates them. The story was brought back for Proving Ground, although it doesn't feel as tense as the previous 3 games. It's certainly a lot laid back. There's not much high stakes or really any kind of serious competition. The player's custom skater just goes around talking to pro skaters and doing projects with them. They don't have to worry about their skating career going down the drain, no stress about winning a huge competition, or saving a historical relic. Despite all that, I do like the story aspect of this game. The characters have personality and are likable. They not only stand by the player's skater, but each of them really feels different in how they act and what their specialty in skating is. There's also some decent humor throughout the cutscenes too. I had a good laugh here and there. I didn't feel like any of the episodes dragged on or were too long either. Each has just enough content to justify their existence and entertain the player. Proving Ground has 3 different types of mission stories. Rigging, where players create their own set pieces and do tricks off them. Career, where players do things in order to attract sponsors. And Hardcore Skating is for the most dedicated skaters that just want to prove to themselves they can do incredible feats if they put their mind to it. Each mission type feels pretty different enough from one another. They all find ways to creatively use the new mechanics and physics of this game. It's fun to do those crazy stunts on the hardcore missions, feels good to gloat in the glamour of fame with the career missions, and the rigging missions are enjoyable because they make the player use their mind and come up with cool ways to take down challenges with their gear and contraptions. While still on missions, Proving Ground also has a couple of final goals where players will have to do multiple feats in a row, and their final ranking depends on how well they did during the individual challenges. I quite like these final goals. They make the player think about which tricks they should pull off. They have the player using all the stuff they learned during the career mode, and they're just fun, simply put. They remind me of the pro challenges from Pro Skater 4 if they were expanded and weren't as hard, so yeah, I'm a big fan of this edition. Proving Ground had a skill tree that players could upgrade once they got enough points, and all these upgrades pertain to the new additions and tricks introduced in this game. I think it's a good idea, but I didn't really care for it that much considering how small and insignificant they are. I guess it's because I didn't find myself using the new mechanics of Proving Ground that much. Really, the only upgrade I liked was the one that increases the perfect aggro kick window, because it makes it easier to quickly travel around the map. Again, there's nothing wrong with this idea, it's just, in my opinion, these upgrades really don't do that much to spice up the gameplay, or do enough to make the game feel significantly different. Well, with all that out of the way, I want to bring up a few general issues I have with these two games. I'm not really a fan of the skating engine from Project 8. I feel so sluggish and slow whenever I skate about. It's such a downgrade from the floaty physics of the Underground games that really let players go all over the map while seamlessly nailing tricks to build up a sick combo. In this game, I couldn't even get enough speed to hit this beaver banner in the high school area. Like, how bad does this have to be that I can't even get enough air to hit a sign 8 feet up in the air? I also really disliked how the customization of the previous games were stripped down. Players got to go buck wild with the amount of things that they can mess with when they made their custom characters in the Underground games. But in this game, the player only gets so many options when it comes to that. Remember all of those cool things the player could do to their skater in the last 3 games, including an array of all different kinds of apparel and the ability to change the skater's anatomy? Well, most of them are gone, and there's only so many ways the player can change their character in Project 8. What's funny is, Proving Ground doesn't have this issue at all. It's like a complete 180 from the customization system of Project 8. The characters have a lot more clothing and accessory options. They can even change the color of their skin to any shade they like. Speaking of Proving Ground, while its physics feel pretty similar, I feel nowhere near as sluggish or as slow in that game. With the addition of the aggro kick, I can fly through the streets of Philly, and I can get so much air in that game too. I'm also not a really big fan of the Nail a Trick feature either. Okay, so a quick summary on Nail a Trick. This mode allows for players to go slow mode and focus on how they hit a flip trick by doing an extreme zoom on the player's skateboard. Players nail a trick by using the analog sticks to kick their board and do various tricks with it as they glide through the air. Proving Ground also had Nail a Grab and Nail a Manual, which was pretty much the same idea as Nail a Trick, but with grabs and manuals. It hyperfixates on the trick being performed. The idea isn't half bad, but the execution sucks. It's way overcomplicated. The number one thing I hate about it is the feature will flat out let players bail if they do something slightly off. Like, I have no idea how I'm supposed to move my feet to hit the board. Whenever I try to do something past 2 tricks, I bail immediately. When I let players do whatever the hell they want in this mode, instead of extremely limiting them, the player should only bail when they're about to land and their skateboard isn't appropriately set. Not whenever the player makes a slight mishap and not give an explanation as to why they failed. Nail a Grab and Nail a Manual are just fine. They feel nowhere near as aggravating as Nail a Trick. There's only so many ways the player can mess up with those modes. Like, whenever I bailed, I actually felt like it made sense. Regardless, I'm not really a fan of any of these nail modes because I don't think the slow motion aspect of them works for the gameplay of Tony Hawk. I mean, I feel like a big part of this franchise's fun was going all around the maps and doing sick tricks and combos. I really can't think of anything in the previous games that was as slow paced as these modes are. So to have something that cuts away from doing adrenaline pumping combos and other action packed things just doesn't make sense for the series. So overall, while both these games made some good gameplay decisions, some of them really missed the mark on what made this series great, and didn't work out so well. But for the most part, I think the gameplay for both these games are good. It's just Proving Grounds is much better than Project 8's. One of the biggest changes to the levels was they're all one big map that connects, instead of the individual areas that players would have to choose from the levels menu, so players can go anywhere at any time. Everything in Project 8's map was largely connected by the town in the middle, so it's not that complex, while Proving Grounds' map has much more connections and ways to travel to other parts of the map. This idea is great, but also not that great. It's cool because the player won't have to deal with loading screens anymore, and they can also have a lot of fun comboing from one part of the map to another. But on the other hand, this limits the variety of the maps. What I mean by that is, the Tony Hawk games were known for their levels that took place all around the world, so having both maps take place in one general area takes out some of the magic of unlocking new levels. In pretty much every previous game, it was so cool to unlock a new level and see the completely different geometry and look of the map due to it taking place in a different part of the world than the previous area. But obviously, this magic is lost because of how well connected everything is in these games. Now, that's not to say all the areas look the same, but both these maps have a very urban feel, and that really degrades the value of the maps, especially when the older games took players all around the world in different types of architecture. Well, with that out of the way, Proving Grounds map is way better than Project 8's. Project 8 has too many hills and upwards verticality, and since the player can't go fast in that game, getting around the map is a hassle for how compact and small it is. There's also nothing in Project 8's map that really blew me away, or made me want to stay in it way longer than any other section. There's just something about that game's map that lacks cohesiveness and personality. It doesn't have that same charm a lot of previous maps had. The flow of Proving Grounds map is much better, and that's probably because players can get around quickly with the aggro kick, but even then, things like the Metro make it easier to get to other places as well. Speaking of which, this map also has more variety, and doesn't feel as confined as Project 8's did. While still in this game's map, I just want to express my love for the Space Museum. I adore skating around that bad boy. All the props and set pieces were so much fun to do tricks on and around. It's such a unique place to skate in, especially considering how different it is from the rest of this game's vibes and more grounded feel. It reminded me of some of the special levels that players could unlock in previous games like Skater Heaven or the Triangle. If I were to criticize one thing about this game's map, it would be that while its flow is good, it isn't perfect. I feel like there should be a few more connections between some parts of the map, especially considering how many of the missions take place on completely different sides of the map. Oftentimes I had to travel all the way around the map just to get to the next mission. They also took away the day and night cycle too. I know it's kind of a small removal, but still, that little addition made the maps cooler, and the artificial lighting and night sky made it so the visuals of one level didn't wear as fast on the player's eyes. Okay, enough of the map. Let's talk a little bit about the art style. I think the art style of both games is just fine. They reek a little bit of early 7th generation games, but I think all the other aspects are good. The only thing I really don't like about Proving Grounds' art style is that everything just looks so drab and dull. Like, where's the color that was a fairly big part of the Pro Skater games? I understand this game wanted to be more serious than its predecessors. After all, a lot of the humor the series was known for was cut out, and man, it makes this game feel a little out of place because of it. This is also reflected in other parts of this game too, like the fact there's really no special characters, and that's one thing I loved about the series, so yeah, this new direction wasn't my favorite decision by Neversoft. The animations and the cutscenes for both these games are spectacular. They feel so lively and like the characters are pumped to do some rad skating. They know how to get players stoked for the next mission. Speaking of the characters, I think Project 8's human models look a bit odd, but otherwise, I guess they're human enough. Okay, one more thing. The skating FMVs that were largely missing in the last 3 games are back, and not only were they a refreshing addition from the past, but they intertwine with both games' campaigns seamlessly. Whenever the player talks to a pro in either game for the first time, the game shows the player a short video set skater busting out some of the tricks they're known for, along with songs from the soundtrack in the background. I like this is how they went about using the FMVs in this game because they're short but sweet, so players don't have to wait a minute to get back to the gameplay, and if the player isn't familiar with the pro, the videos provide a nice introduction to what kind of skater they are. Not to mention, I think these FMVs are a great way to get the player pumped. I mean, how couldn't the player want to do some extraordinary feat after they see a pro bust out some sick tricks to a banging tune? Alright, let's talk about the music for both these games. I see the soundtrack for both these games are just alright. There's only a few songs from each that I really enjoyed and wanted to listen to outside of their respective games, but I will say though, the songs are appropriate to the action happening on screen, so both soundtracks blend in well with the gameplay. I enjoy Project 8's soundtrack slightly more than Proving Grounds, only because the songs I did enjoy from Project 8's selection are better than the ones I enjoyed from Proving Grounds' selection, but that's really it. Neversoft didn't really expand what kind of genres or type of music could get into the Tony Hawk series, although I can't really blame them for doing so. Having too many genres can make the soundtracks kinda awkward and not cohesive. Like, I already have enough whiplash whenever Summer Madness, a jazz funk song from Kool and the Gang, plays right after Angel of Death, an aggressive metal song from Slayer. So the selection is already kinda mismatched. Anyways, I wasn't sure what I was expecting from these soundtracks. I just kinda wish we got punk covers from famous rock bands like American Wasteland gave us, but I guess it's asking for too much. Otherwise, that's all I had to say about the soundtrack to these games. After all, they didn't do anything new that the previous ones did, so they're just kinda flat and aren't that exciting. Same goes to the sound effects. I literally had nothing to say about them. They work. The voice acting for both games is good for the most part. There are some characters that sound really uninterested and don't want to be there, but otherwise, the pros put on a good performance, and the voice actors for the fictional characters fit their character's personality and attitude. Hey, speaking of the voice acting, is it me or does some of it sound like it was poorly compressed in Proving Ground?
Is a hit.
What? Really?
Really? How would you like your own show?
What?
You heard me. Deal's already in the works. You on board?
So, that's my thoughts on Project 8 and Proving Ground. I really enjoy Project 8's more laid-back approach to serious gameplay, and there's plenty of different ways to progress, so the player doesn't ever feel like they need to force himself to do something in order to keep going. However, I think Proving Ground's gameplay is more fun because not only does it have a lot of the same goals as its predecessor, but the episodes not only contain various fun missions that really show the player all the different things they can do, but the cutscenes that demonstrate the situation at immersion, have personable and likable people/characters, and they're short but sweet, so players can get back into the action without having to wait too long. Not to mention, Proving Ground's map and physics work so much better than Project 8's. The layout and geometry work so much better with the aggro kick, and the speed in Proving Ground. By the way, you may have noticed my footage for both these games may seem a little different or off. That's because I was using Project 8 Plus and Proving Ground Plus. Community made mods for both titles that refine the physics and add some other cool things. I highly recommend these mods for anybody that wants to play these games because of how much better they make the skating feel, and the special characters in Proving Ground are so nice to play with. Well, that's all I have to say about these games. Have a good day and make sure you nail that trick. Or don't, because that system kinda sucks.